Millionaire divorced his wife, not knowing she was pregnant. 18 years later, his elite ex returns with twins. 18 years ago, he signed divorce papers, convinced she had betrayed him. He never imagined she was holding his most precious gift, not one child, but twins he never knew existed. Hey, beautiful souls, I'm your storyteller, James. If your heart's ready for a journey of love, betrayal, and second chances, stay with me, because this story will take you through every tear, every heartbreak, and every moment of hope. And remember, the best part of any story is the part we feel together. The city of Los Angeles sparkled like a constellation of ambition below him, but inside the glass and steel monolith that was Hale Corporation, Leon Hale felt a chill that no skyline could warm. He moved through the corridors with the precise confidence of a man who had built everything he owned from sheer will, yet the air he breathed felt heavy with invisible walls. Employees hurried past, lowering their eyes when he walked, murmuring greetings he never returned. Fear was currency here, and Leon spent it liberally. He was 32 years old, a self-made millionaire, the kind of man who could bend numbers, people, and fortunes to his will without a second thought. The kind of man who had perfected isolation until that morning. Selena Carter arrived like sunlight sneaking through storm clouds. She carried herself with quiet assurance, but her energy was nothing like the rest of the glass-towered world. Her skin, a warm brown that seemed to glow under the office lights, and her curls, gently framing a face that bore both calm and curiosity, immediately stood out. Her eyes, steady and observant, hinted at depths he could not measure. A storm held in balance by patience and resilience. She moved with intention, her steps purposeful, yet she seemed to exist in harmony with the chaos of the office instead of against it. Leon observed from behind his office door, arms crossed, an unreadable mask on his face. He told himself she was just another assistant, another cog in the machinery of his empire. He repeated the mantra to himself like a shield against curiosity. But the sound of her voice, low and clear, carrying the timbre of someone who both listened and understood, began to pierce through the walls he had built around himself. He caught himself pausing, listening to the soft hum of her existence, the quiet efficiency with which she handled schedules, emails, and crises that would have him snapping at lesser assistants. Her laughter, soft and unforced, one of those rare, spontaneous notes in a life measured by profit and deadlines, startled him. He found it distracting. It unsettled him. And yet, in that disturbance, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Curiosity without control, fascination without ownership. Days blurred into late nights, and Leon found himself lingering in the office long after meetings had ended. He watched her, sometimes from the corner of his eye, as she meticulously organized files, tapped through emails with grace, and spoke to other employees with a kindness that felt alien in the halls of Hale Corporation. He noticed the way her shoulders relaxed when she smiled, how her brow furrowed slightly when she concentrated, and the way she seemed unaffected by the constant pressure that gnawed at everyone else. For the first time in years, he did not feel the satisfaction of command or power. Instead, he felt the quiet pull of something more fragile, more human, something dangerous. Leon began to hear the office differently. The click of keyboards, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant murmur of construction outside. All of it faded when Selena was nearby. She created her own atmosphere, one that demanded attention without demanding obedience, and that unnerved him in ways he couldn't name. He found excuses to walk past her desk, a file to review, a memo to sign, anything that let him watch the subtle rhythm of her day. One evening, the sky over Los Angeles darkened quickly. Clouds rolled in from the Pacific, heavy and threatening, and rain began to drum against the massive glass windows of Hale Corporation. Most employees had left, scurrying to escape the storm, yet Selena remained at her desk, focused on her work. Leon found himself walking toward her, the echoes of his steps loud in the empty office. He paused for a moment, observing her through the rain-streaked glass walls, the dim lights reflecting off her soft curls. She was unaware of his presence until he spoke, and even then his words felt unusual on his own tongue. "You make the noise in my life go quiet." Selena's breath faltered, her pen slipping slightly from her fingers. "Mr. Hale, that sounds like something a boss shouldn't say." Her voice carried a mix of curiosity, hesitation, and a trace of amusement, but mostly it was the soft barrier of someone not used to being vulnerable. Leon's chest tightened, a sensation he had long forgotten, the sudden, jarring awareness of emotion that refused to be ignored. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. There was a subtle tension in the air, the kind that made time feel slower, sharper, almost too deliberate. His eyes locked on hers, trying to read, trying to measure the distance between propriety and desire. He had never been so aware of a presence before. Her gaze did not waver. It carried a challenge, a quiet assertion that she would not be intimidated, that she would not bend merely because he commanded the room. Leon's lips pressed together for a fraction of a second, a rare private acknowledgement of respect. This was not control. This was not strategy. This was something new, something he neither understood nor wanted to name yet. The storm outside intensified, each crash of thunder echoing like a heartbeat in the vast empty office. The rain cast long shadows across their faces, the reflective lights making her eyes glimmer in ways that seemed almost impossible, almost magical. He wanted to speak, to say something meaningful, but words felt inadequate. The silence between them became a language of its own, charged with tension, curiosity, and the faintest touch of longing. He could feel the walls around his heart trembling, the kind of trembling one feels only when a lifelong barrier begins to crack, quiet, insistent, unavoidable. He realized that he did not want to retreat from it, even though every rational fiber in his body screamed caution. This was dangerous. Yet he was drawn to it with the same precision he once used to calculate risk in business. But here, no formula existed. Selena, sensing the change in the room, straightened slightly. Her pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure, a testament to the steel hidden beneath her softness. The air between them was thick, charged, electric. She wanted to speak, but hesitation held her tongue. She had seen many men like him, brilliant, commanding, untouchable. Yet tonight she saw something else, a crack, a glimpse of vulnerability, unguarded and raw. Leon's breath caught. He realized that this wasn't merely about attraction or infatuation. It was something deeper, something he had spent his life avoiding. The recognition that another person could affect him, unarmed, uncalculated, unstoppable. It terrified him, yet it thrilled him. He moved slightly closer still, careful, deliberate, aware of every micro-movement, every twitch of emotion. Her eyes did not leave his. She held him in her gaze as firmly as he tried to hold on to her presence. It was a silent negotiation, a battle without words, where both knew the stakes but neither could articulate them. Finally, he whispered, barely audible over the rain, "Then maybe I don't want to be your boss anymore." Leon steps closer, eyes locked on hers. The air between them vibrates with unspoken possibilities, desire, danger, and the first hint that this connection could change both their lives forever. The air between Leon and Selena remained thick after that moment in the empty office. Neither had spoken further, yet neither could ignore the shift that had settled into their lives, a quiet tremor beneath the surface of everyday routine. Leon walked back to his office, but his steps felt different, heavier, lighter, uncertain all at once. His mind, trained for strategy and precision, couldn't chart a course through this new territory. He felt exposed, unarmed in a way that made the empire around him feel smaller, almost irrelevant. Selena returned to her work, but her heart raced in ways it hadn't for years. She tried to focus on spreadsheets, emails, and schedules, but the memory of his words lingered in her mind, refusing to be pushed aside. She could feel the subtle pull of his presence even when he wasn't near, the faintest echo of his voice in her mind, and it unnerved her. It was dangerous to feel so deeply in an environment that demanded composure, efficiency, and detachment. Yet she couldn't stop herself from noticing, from caring. Days passed and the office buzzed with whispered rumors. People noticed the shift in Leon Hale. The same man who had commanded fear and respect now lingered near his assistant, offered quiet guidance, lingered in hallways where he had never paused before. The employees spoke in hushed tones, speculating, daring not to cross the line, but hungry for stories that humanized their untouchable CEO. Leon didn't address the rumors. He didn't need to. He found reasons to linger wherever Selena was, meetings that could have been emails stretched into long discussions. Coffee breaks became extended walks, where silence filled the spaces between words and eyes held unspoken conversations. Each day, the line between professionalism and something else, something neither wanted to define too quickly, grew thinner, more fragile. One evening, Leon asked Selena to join him for a dinner meeting at a quiet cafe in Malibu, tucked away from the prying eyes of the city. The waves crashed softly against the shore, and the golden-orange hue of the setting sun danced across the horizon. The sound of the ocean was soothing, but it did nothing to calm the tension that hummed between them. They sat across from each other, menus untouched, eyes locked, both aware of the gravity that their shared silence carried. "Selena," Leon said finally, voice low, almost vulnerable, "I don't care about status. I don't care about color. I care about you." Selena's hand trembled slightly, betraying the calm she tried to maintain. "Leon, you live in a world built on judgment, on expectation. I won't survive there." A soft laugh escaped him, half bitter, half melancholy. "You won't survive without me," he whispered. "And I won't either." The simplicity of the truth stunned her. No manipulation, no games, just honesty. Her chest tightened and tears threatened, but she blinked them away, unwilling to surrender fully. Yet inside, her heart pounded with hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel for years. In the days that followed, Leon's gestures grew bolder, more intentional. A gentle hand on her back as she passed in the hallway. A message waiting on her desk in the morning. Coffee on me. Lunches that lasted longer than necessary, filled with laughter and stories of lives outside the office. Slowly, Selena allowed herself to relax, to trust the warmth that was offered without expectation or condition. Weeks passed, and the culmination came one quiet evening. Leon handed her a small velvet box, trembling slightly, a gesture so out of character that it made her heart seize. She opened it to reveal a simple ring, elegant in its understatement, a promise unspoken yet profoundly understood. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and the world around them seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them suspended in a fragile, perfect bubble of possibility. Her lips parted to say yes when his phone vibrated against the table. The screen illuminated his face. Victoria Hale. Leon's jaw tightened subtly, and the warmth of the moment faltered under the weight of inevitability. Across Los Angeles, Victoria slammed her wine glass onto the marble counter, the shattering echo of her anger filling the quiet of her penthouse. She moved with deliberate precision, stalking her living room as if pacing could contain her fury. "That girl," she hissed under her breath, "is not marrying into the Hale family. Not now. Not ever." She picked up her phone, tapping numbers with calculated urgency. "I want everything on her," she said into the receiver. Every detail, every secret. Find me something, anything. I will not let my son throw his name into the trash. Back at the cafe, Leon's fingers lingered over the ring, and Selena's eyes searched his face, sensing a storm approaching that neither of them had anticipated. The golden sunlight seemed suddenly fragile, fading against the shadows creeping into their shared space. For a moment, nothing existed but the two of them, hearts beating in uncertain synchrony, caught between hope and a looming threat that neither could yet name. As they sat there, the ocean waves distant and soft, Selena's mind raced. She had never been caught in a situation like this before, where desire and fear intertwined so intricately. She wanted to speak, to reassure him, but words felt fragile, insufficient against the tidal wave of history, expectation, and unseen forces pressing down on them both. Leon's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering, but even he felt the tension clawing at his chest. He had spent years mastering control, yet here, in the quiet of a Malibu evening, he was powerless against the emotions simmering inside him. He wanted to shield her, protect her from everything, even from himself, but he didn't know how. The subtle pressure of her hand brushing against his as she reached for her cup sent a jolt through him. It was a reminder, simple, human, dangerous, that he had never felt this way before. The thought of losing her, even for a moment, became unbearable. They both sat in silence, the unspoken words thickening the air, when a waiter approached, breaking the fragile spell with mundane questions about orders. Yet, even the intrusion could not dispel the intensity of the moment. Every glance, every breath between them carried weight, carrying possibility, tension, and the unmistakable thrill of hearts daring to cross lines they had been taught to respect. Even as they finished their meal, the city around them unaware of the storm brewing in their lives, both knew that nothing would remain the same. Something profound had shifted, a subtle but undeniable current pulling them toward choices they could not yet name. Leon walked her to her car as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and violet. He paused at the door, hesitant, caught between restraint and impulse. "Selena," he said softly, "I want you to know. Whatever happens, I will not let this fade." She looked at him, breath caught between hope and caution. "Leon, we don't even know what this means yet." He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth tugging upward in a rare display of vulnerability. "We'll find out together." The world seemed to hold its breath as she slid into her car, and he watched her drive away, the streetlights reflecting off the wet asphalt like scattered stars. There was exhilaration, there was fear, and beneath it all, a quiet certainty that nothing between them would ever be the same again. And as he walked back toward the office, the shadows stretching long across the lobby floor, he felt the first stirrings of a reckoning he could not yet imagine, one that would test everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and his own heart. Victoria Hale, far across the city, leans over her desk, voice low and deadly. "Find me anything, anything at all. I will not let that girl take my son away. Not now, not ever." The morning of the wedding dawned soft and golden over the California coast, a deceptive serenity that cloaked the storm gathering quietly beneath. The small chapel overlooked the cliffs, waves crashing against the rocks below, a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. There was no media frenzy, no throng of corporate elites clamoring to witness the union of a powerful name. Just Leon and Selena, standing in silence, letting the sound of the ocean fill the spaces where words might have fallen short. Selena adjusted the delicate lace of her dress, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes were steady. She had imagined this day countless times in the quiet corners of her apartment, where dreams of a love that could survive the harshness of the world seemed fragile yet precious. She believed, truly believed, that love might be enough to withstand anything, that it could shield her heart from the shadows she knew were lurking. Leon watched her with a careful intensity, noting every detail, the way her hair caught the morning light, the gentle slope of her shoulders, the way her breath hitched as the chapel doors opened. He felt something stir inside him, something protective and fierce, and it terrified him because he had never let anyone in so fully before. The ceremony was intimate. The ocean wind teased strands of hair into her face, and Leon brushed them away with a tenderness he rarely allowed himself to show. The vows were whispered, heartfelt, stripped of pomp and ceremony, and in those moments, everything else fell away. For a fleeting hour, the world outside ceased to exist. But the illusion shattered the moment they stepped into the Hale mansion. The grandeur of the estate, the gilded frames, the polished marble floors, all spoke of wealth and power, but also of control, expectation, and unyielding judgment. Victoria Hale waited, poised and immaculate, every gesture deliberate, every smile a carefully measured weapon. "Welcome, charity case," she said softly, a chilling tone that cut through the air more sharply than any scream. Her eyes glittered with something dangerous, something that had been honed over decades of controlling, manipulating, and commanding those around her. Selena's spine stiffened, but she forced herself to return the smallest hint of a polite nod, refusing to show the tremor beneath her skin. From that day forward, every corner of the mansion became a battlefield. Curtains chosen for their color, furniture arranged in deliberate symmetry, meals served with the subtlest sneer. Everything was a silent accusation. Victoria's presence was a shadow that seemed to follow Selena, her judgment invisible but ever present. Every breath Selena drew in that house felt weighed down, measured, dissected, and deemed insufficient. Leon tried to shield her as best he could. He would arrive home early when he could, intercept subtle barbs, and speak words of reassurance. But the Empire demanded attention, dragging him away at the most inconvenient moments. Meetings, crises, board decisions. They came first, always first. And though he returned with a fierce desire to protect, he often found Selena standing alone, steadfast, silently enduring the storm he could not chase away. Despite the relentless pressure, Selena clung to hope. One evening, standing in the grand kitchen alone, her hand resting lightly on the soft curve of her stomach, she whispered to herself, almost shyly, "Maybe a baby will bring warmth to this house." The words were a prayer, a fragile hope cast into a sea of cold expectation. Victoria, ever vigilant, overheard. She did not miss the glance, the whisper, the subtle motion. Her mind moved instantly, calculating and cruel. She would not allow this household, this family, to bend to a simple human desire, not while her authority remained unchallenged. Later that night, she sought out the doctor Leon trusted most. The office was dimly lit, lined with certificates and accolades that spoke of years of professional success. Yet tonight, it would bear witness to something far darker. Victoria slid an envelope across the table, her nails tapping in slow, deliberate rhythm. "Destroy whatever hope they think they have," she said, voice low and commanding. There was no hint of remorse in her tone, only the cold precision of someone accustomed to wielding power without consequence. The doctor hesitated for the briefest moment, a flicker of conscience brushing his mind, but the weight of loyalty, fear, and professional caution silenced it. He nodded once, quietly, his hands resting on the polished wood of his desk, knowing that this simple act would ripple across lives in ways no one could yet predict. Days bled into nights, and Selena moved through the mansion like a candle flame in a storm, flickering but refusing to be extinguished. She smiled when she could, worked tirelessly to make the house feel like home, and held fast to the fragile hope that love, real, enduring, human love, could survive even the harshest winters of judgment. Leon watched her from across rooms, halls, and gardens, silently admiring her resilience. his chest tightening at every slight insult she endured. He wanted to scream at the injustice, to strike down the invisible chains that threatened her spirit, but he knew that any confrontation would provoke Victoria's wrath further. He had to be patient, careful, strategic, and it tore at him in ways he could not describe. One afternoon, Selena paused by the grand staircase, looking down at the polished marble floors that gleamed under the chandelier's light. She felt an unease she couldn't explain, a tension that settled deep in her stomach. The house was silent, yet the silence felt heavy, oppressive, like a prelude to something looming, unseen, inevitable. She pressed a hand to her forehead, blinking against a sudden wave of dizziness. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft footsteps behind her, hesitant but deliberate. She turned to see Leon, eyes full of concern, crossing the distance in long strides. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low, tender, edged with the fear he rarely admitted. Selena forced a smile, shaking her head lightly. I'm fine," she whispered. But even as the words left her lips, her knees buckled slightly, and the world tilted beneath her. Leon caught her immediately, arms steady and strong, anchoring her against the sudden falter. His pulse raced, heart thudding with a mixture of fear, anger, and protectiveness. He had never felt so acutely. "No," he said firmly. "You're not fine." The room seemed to hold its breath, the grandeur of the mansion fading into insignificance against the rawness of the moment. Selena's eyes met his, brimming with unshed tears, and for a heartbeat, the world contracted to just the two of them, a fragile connection standing against the storm outside and the storm within. Meanwhile, in another part of Los Angeles, Victoria sat in her office, the envelope she had prepared resting in her hands. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes, a predator satisfied with the first move of a long game. She knew that by the time the day ended, her influence would have left a mark so deep that it might take years, if ever, to heal. Selena's vision blurred, dizziness making the world sway. The scent of fresh flowers in the grand kitchen mixed with the sharp edge of polished wood and cold marble. She gasped softly, barely aware of Leon's strong hands keeping her upright. "Leon," she whispered, voice cracking. "I can't." The room tilted. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed into his arms, fainting as the world went dark around her. In that quiet, desperate instant, the power Victoria wielded in the shadows became real. The forged report, waiting to shatter dreams and trust, was now in motion, a weapon designed to turn hope into despair. Selena slumps unconscious in Leon's arms, the mansion's opulence around them suddenly suffocating. In a distant office, Victoria smirks as the doctor hands her the forged report, knowing that in mere hours, the fragile promise of their love could be destroyed forever. The sunlight fell unevenly across the polished marble floors of Hale Corporation, catching in the brass accents of the office as Selena clutched the small gift bag tightly to her chest. Her hands trembled slightly, a mixture of nerves and excitement coursing through her. Inside, two tiny baby socks peeked out, soft, delicate, a symbol of a joy she barely allowed herself to imagine. For weeks, she had wondered if the life growing within her would be a single heartbeat or two, and her intuition whispered the possibility of twins. Her steps were light, almost buoyant, as she made her way to Leon's office. Each click of her heels against the marble echoed softly in the otherwise silent corridor, a rhythm of hope and anticipation. She imagined his reaction, the warmth in his eyes, the quiet awe she had learned to recognize in him over the past months. The empire, the wealth, the cold exterior, all of that melted in moments like this, leaving only the raw human connection that had begun to grow between them. But fate, she would soon learn, had no intention of allowing her this simple, precious moment. Victoria Hale stormed into Leon's office without warning, her presence as sharp and sudden as a lightning strike. Her heels clicked aggressively against the floor, echoing through the cavernous room, announcing a storm that was not bound by weather, but by pure, calculated malice. In her hands she waved a stack of papers, the crisp edges trembling with the authority of deception. "Selena is infertile," she spat, her voice icy, venom laced in every syllable. "She faked fainting to trap you into pity." Leon froze mid-step, the world tilting beneath the weight of her words. His eyes darted between the papers and the figure of his mother, disbelief etched deeply into his face. "No, she wouldn't," he murmured, his voice breaking in ways that stunned even him. He had always controlled the world around him, but this felt like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Victoria's lips curled into a cruel smile. "She already trapped you into marriage. What's next, Leon? Fake pregnancies? Pretending to carry your children just to cement her place?" Her tone was calculated, meant to wound, and every syllable landed like a precise blade. Leon's jaw tightened, his mind spinning, struggling to piece together reality from the sudden, sharp narrative thrust upon him. He had trusted her. He had loved her. He had believed in the integrity of the woman who had become the center of his fragile, newly discovered humanity. And now everything he thought he knew was being ripped apart by the very person he should have trusted most. When Selena arrived at his office later that afternoon, her excitement barely contained, she did not find the warmth she had imagined. Instead, she was met with an icy, unrecognizable version of the man she loved. He held the papers in his hand, the edges fluttering like the wings of some cruel bird, and threw them toward her. "You lied to me," his voice cracked, raw with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "For money. For my name." Selena's hands flew to the papers instinctively, as if they carried a physical weight meant to crush her. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, and then streamed freely down her cheeks. "Leon, listen. I'm carrying—" But he cut her off, his words a hammer striking her fragile world. "Get out!" His voice shattered the space between them, echoing harshly against the walls of the office. "The Hale family is done with you." She staggered back, breath caught in her throat, chest constricted by shock and despair. His signature scratched across the divorce papers, a line severing years of love, trust, and shared dreams. Cold, cruel, final. The ring of permanence that no argument, no explanation could undo. Selena's sobs were quiet at first, muffled by the shock that froze her limbs, then grew louder as her knees buckled beneath her. She fled the office into the open city streets, rain beginning to fall in irregular sheets. The droplets hit her face and hair, mixing with the tears she could no longer contain, blurring the line between grief and fury, despair and determination. She clutched her stomach instinctively. The tiny life, no, the two tiny lives, inside her a fragile beacon of hope. "I won't let them take you from me. Either of you," she whispered into the wind, her voice a soft, broken vow that carried over the roar of the storm around her. The city blurred around her, streetlights reflecting on the wet asphalt like fragments of shattered dreams. She stumbled, her feet slipping, but she forced herself onward, driven by a primal need to protect what was hers. Every drop of rain that soaked through her coat felt like a baptism of defiance, a declaration that she would not surrender, not even to the empire that had sought to crush her spirit. But the world had other plans. As she ran, dizziness hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her vision flickered at the edges, and a hot, metallic pain surged sharply between her legs. She gasped, faltering, the sensation unfamiliar and terrifying. The rain-slicked pavement betrayed her steps, and she collapsed to the curb, instinctively curling around her stomach, pressing her hands against the swelling life she protected. Her breath came in ragged, broken gasps. The small gift bag, now soaked and forgotten, lay at her side, the tiny baby socks peeking out like a cruel reminder of the joy she had hoped to share. Her mind raced, memories of Leon, the brief moments of love, the hope they had shared, all colliding with the reality of betrayal and pain, orchestrated by a woman who would not rest. Cars passed by, tires hissing against the waterlogged roads, indifferent to the small, crumpled figure on the sidewalk. Pedestrians hurried past, umbrellas shielding them from the rain, none seeing the drama unfolding at the edge of the city. Selena felt the weight of isolation pressing down, but she refused to release her grip. Her hands stayed where they belonged, over the twin lives she carried, protecting them from the storm above and the cruelty below. She could feel the heartbeat of her unborn children faintly, each thump a fragile reassurance against the chaos surrounding her. She whispered to them, voice trembling yet resolute, "Stay with me. We will survive. We will rise, I promise." In that moment, the world felt infinite and suffocating all at once. The roar of the rain, the distant hum of the city, the ache of betrayal in her heart. Every instinct screamed for her to give in, to collapse entirely, but a small, fierce ember of defiance burned bright within her. She would not give up. She could not. Somewhere above, the storm poured relentlessly, as if mourning the injustice inflicted upon her. Each drop became a drumbeat of determination, a rhythm she matched in her heartbeat, a silent promise to endure. Yet, even as she struggled to rise, the hands of fate tightened their grip. Victoria's plan, executed with meticulous cruelty, was already set in motion. The forged reports, the manipulation, the lies, all poised to explode into devastation. And Selena, unaware of the full magnitude of what had been unleashed, could only fight for the lives cradled beneath her hands, the tiny miracles that depended entirely on her strength. The night deepened, darkness folding over the city like a suffocating blanket. Her body shook, exhaustion mixing with fear, but still she clung to hope, fragile and fleeting, knowing that the smallest spark of resilience could ignite a fire strong enough to resist even the harshest storm. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, a chorus she barely heard as she pressed her hands tighter, whispering words of comfort to the lives she carried. Every sob, every shiver, every drop of rain became a testament to her courage. Even in betrayal and heartbreak, even at the edge of despair, she refused to relinquish her claim on love, on life, on the future. Blood trickles down Selena's leg as she collapses beside a deserted bus stop, hands tightly shielding her unborn twins, rain mixing with tears, while Victoria's cruelty silently looms over them, ready to shatter everything she holds dear. The rain had washed the streets clean, leaving a cold, empty city behind as Selena disappeared without a trace. No forwarding address, no whispered goodbyes, no calls that could be traced. She had vanished from Los Angeles as completely as if she had never existed there, carrying with her the secret of her unborn twins and a heart fractured into 1,000 unspoken pieces. The skyline, once a place of hope and ambition, now seemed to mock her, glittering coldly in the distance as she fled from everything that had betrayed her. Selena traveled light, taking only what she could carry, and every step felt like a battle against the memories that threatened to pull her back. Nights were the hardest. Every shadow in a darkened alley reminded her of Leon's expression, the crushing weight of betrayal, and the echo of Victoria's cruel laughter. Yet she pressed on, determined to carve a life where her daughters, Lara and Liana, could exist untainted by the arrogance, the power, and the manipulation she had narrowly escaped. She found a small apartment in Sacramento, modest and unremarkable, yet it became a sanctuary. The walls were bare, the floors creaked under her steps, and the neighbors kept to themselves. Here no one knew her story. Here she could breathe, could build a life from the fragments left behind. She filled the rooms with quiet, careful touches of love, soft blankets, warm meals, tiny toys for hands that hadn't yet opened to the world. Months later, her prayers and endurance bore fruit. Laura and Liana came into the world, two small miracles wrapped in fragile cries. Selena's hands trembled as she held them, overwhelmed by a love so fierce and consuming that it burned away the last vestiges of despair. The sleepless nights, the relentless exhaustion, every ache and pang, every tear shed alone. It was all worth this. Two lives to protect, to nurture, to love without compromise. Life in Sacramento became a rhythm of survival and devotion. Diapers, midnight feedings, and endless laundry filled her days, yet every exhausted sigh carried a quiet gratitude. She learned to exist in the margins, in the quiet shadows of a city that didn't know her name, yet she thrived because she had purpose, a reason that transcended fear, pain, and the ghosts of the past. Back in Los Angeles, however, a different story unfolded. Leon moved through the empty halls of his mansion like a ghost. The empire he had built, the millions he had accumulated, the soirees and accolades. None of it filled the void Selena had left behind. The parties were loud, but the laughter rang hollow. The champagne flowed, but no warmth touched his heart. His life became a series of performances, gestures meant to impress, distract, and ultimately numb the memory of the woman who had stolen his heart without intention of giving it back. Yet, in the quiet moments, rare and fleeting, her voice returned to him. A whisper carried on the wind through the empty hallways, through the spaces between candles and silk curtains. Love isn't weakness, Leon. Fear is. It haunted him. Every mirror he avoided reflected not the man he had become, but the man he had lost. Every glance at the mansion's opulence reminded him of the betrayal, the miscommunication, the lies that had severed them. And still, despite the bitterness, despite the self-imposed exile from his own emotions, he could not forget her. He buried himself in work, drowning in financial reports, acquisitions, and power plays, each deal a shield against the ache in his chest. Yet even wealth and influence could not erase the memories. The curve of her smile, the warmth of her touch, the quiet strength she exuded even when the world sought to crush her. Nights were the cruelest. He would stare at the ceiling, replaying the moment she had fled, imagining the rain soaking her hair, the fear and resolve in her eyes, and the weight of the secret she carried. For 18 years, he lived in a careful balance of avoidance and obsession. He avoided the mansion for extended stays, claiming trips and meetings as necessary, but the truth was he couldn't face the halls that had once witnessed his love and loss. He avoided mirrors, unable to look at the reflection of a man who had allowed deceit and pride to dictate his life. He avoided the truth, afraid of what he might find if he faced it head-on. The consequences of his mistrust, the children he had unknowingly abandoned, the life that had gone on without him. Selena, on the other hand, flourished quietly. Lara and Liana grew, identical yet distinct, a perfect blend of resilience and innocence. They filled her life with laughter, chaos, and the smallest victories. Each milestone, each step forward, each first word, became a reminder that she had not failed, that she had survived, and that the love she had kept safe had found its way into the world through her daughters. She never allowed herself to dwell on Leon too long. His absence was a wound, yes, but also a shield that kept her heart intact for the sake of the girls. Then, one cold, quiet night, 18 years after the betrayal, everything shifted. Leon's phone buzzed, the vibration sharp against the mahogany desk where he sat, alone. He reached for it instinctively, expecting a business call, a missed opportunity, something mundane. But the voice on the other end made the air in the room crackle. "Leon, it's Selena." His hand gripped the phone with a strength bordering on desperation. Knuckles whitening, fingers trembling, he leaned forward, breath caught in his chest. "Where are you?" His voice was raw, brittle from years of unshed grief, hope and fear all colliding in that single fragile moment. There was a long pause on the line, a deep, deliberate breath. Selena's voice, familiar yet altered by time, carried urgency, warmth, and a weight he could not measure. "It's about your daughters." The word struck him like a physical blow, a collision of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of hope he had long thought extinguished. His heart thundered in his chest, adrenaline and fear intermingling, threatening to unseat him entirely. He imagined her face, the tone of her voice, the lives he had never known existed. But before he could respond, before he could form the words he had rehearsed in dreams and nightmares alike, the line went dead. Silence descended over the room like a suffocating fog. The phone, once a lifeline, now lay inert in his hand, cold and unforgiving. His chest heaved, mind spinning with questions, dread, and anticipation, all tangled together in a knot that refused to untangle. He slammed the phone onto the desk, the sound echoing off the marble and glass around him. He could barely breathe, his heart hammering, the years of regret and longing converging into one jagged, raw ache. The world outside continued, indifferent, as if unaware that in this one small office a storm had begun that would reshape everything he thought he knew. Leon's mind raced. Where were they? How had she survived? Why now? And most painfully, what had he missed all these years? The absence of his daughters haunted him, their faces unknown yet etched into his imagination with startling clarity. Every instinct screamed at him to find them, to make up for lost time, to reclaim the fragments of life he had unknowingly abandoned. He knew that the path forward would be fraught with obstacles, anger, fear, mistrust, the shadow of Victoria Hale looming over every decision. Yet, he could not ignore the call. He could not let another 18 years slip by without seeking what he had lost. Night stretched on, the city lights casting long shadows across the walls of his office. He stood by the window, the phone clutched in his hand like a talisman, staring out at the sprawling city below, wondering where the first step would begin. Somewhere out there, Selena waited. Somewhere out there, Laura and Liana slept peacefully, unaware of the man who had silently mourned their existence for nearly 2 decades. The ache of years lost gnawed at him, mingling with the spark of hope ignited by that single call. He felt exposed, raw, human in a way he had never allowed himself to be, and for the first time he realized that the empire, the wealth, and the power meant nothing without the family he had never known. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't close his eyes. He barely breathed. Every passing second was agony and anticipation intertwined, each heartbeat a reminder that the past and future were colliding in ways that could not be ignored. The line went dead before Leon could speak, leaving him staring at the phone in shock, heart pounding, as the weight of 18 lost years pressed down and the unknown fate of his daughters hung in the balance. The drive up the California coast was a blur of motion and adrenaline. Leon gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, his knuckles slick with sweat, heart hammering like a war drum. The night air rushed past the windows, carrying the faint scent of the ocean, briny and raw, sharp against the tension that tightened every muscle in his body. Every mile closer to San Jose, every flicker of streetlight and distant neon sign made his chest constrict further. The memory of her voice, fragile and trembling, haunted him still. "It's about your daughters." He barely noticed the city lights fading behind him, the bustling streets giving way to the quiet hum of the freeway. Thoughts collided in his mind. 18 years of absence, missed birthdays, missed milestones, the tiny, perfect faces he had never held. He cursed himself silently, over and over, for letting pride and lies destroy the chance at a life he hadn't even realized he wanted until it was too late. The hospital loomed ahead, sterile and bright against the darkness of the night. Leon parked the car hastily, slamming the door behind him, and ran across the slick pavement. Rain mixed with sweat, streaming down his face, stinging his eyes as he reached the emergency entrance. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, stark and unyielding, washing everything in harsh clarity. There she was, Selena, older than he remembered, yet stronger, her poise unbroken despite the fear etched in the corners of her eyes. Her brown skin glowed softly under the hospital lighting, her curls tamed into a practical style, and her posture carried the weight of years he had missed. She didn't speak immediately, didn't allow him to rush in with questions or excuses. "I didn't call for you," she said, her voice steady but sharp, carrying the unmistakable authority of a woman who had survived everything thrown at her. "I called for them." Leon froze. The words cut through the haze of years and regret, sharper than any blade. He opened his mouth, his mind grasping for something, anything, to say. But she shook her head, stopping him mid-thought. His hands twitched, desperate to reach for her, to hold her, to undo all the mistakes that had festered like poison over nearly 2 decades. Through the thick glass of the ICU, he saw them. 2 small, fragile forms lying side by side, hooked to monitors, IV lines snaking delicately into their tiny arms. They were asleep, unconscious, yet unmistakably alive. Their faces mirrored his own jawline, the delicate curve of their cheeks, the faint frown lines inherited from him. They were strangers, yet blood bound them to him irrevocably. His throat tightened. His hands shook so violently that he gripped the glass like it could anchor him, could somehow stop the world from tilting further. What happened? His voice was barely more than a cracked whisper, raw with fear, guilt, and disbelief. Selena turned slightly, avoiding his gaze, but her eyes were soft, haunted, resolute. "An accident," she said quietly. "They need a donor with a rare blood type. Yours." The words shattered him. The floor of his existence, carefully constructed over years of wealth, power, and avoidance, crumbled beneath him. His chest felt hollow yet weighty, as if all the years of absence, of pride, of mistakes, had condensed into a single unbearable moment. "I won't lose them," he whispered, his voice trembling, almost breaking. "Not like I lost you." Selena's expression hardened for a brief instant. Pain and accusation flickered in her eyes. "You didn't lose me, Leon," she said, each word deliberate, echoing like a verdict. "You threw me away." Time slowed. He wanted to argue, to beg, to explain, to rewrite history, but none of it mattered. She was right. He had discarded the one person who had loved him without pretense, without expectation, trusting him with everything he was too blind to appreciate. And now the consequences of his pride and arrogance were staring him in the face in the form of his daughter's fragile lives. He pressed a hand against the glass, fingers splayed, staring down at the monitors, at the tiny chests rising and falling in shallow, fragile rhythm. His heart ached with guilt so sharp it felt physical, slicing through him, leaving him hollow yet burning with desperation. He had lost so much, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Selena turned away, tense, her jaw set, the weight of the past 18 years hanging between them like a storm cloud. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Not until the immediate danger passed, but Leon understood her perfectly. This was not a reconciliation. This was survival. This was life and death. He had no time to process, no time to grieve the years lost. A nurse entered, checking monitors and adjusting tubes, murmuring instructions with calm efficiency that only heightened the surreal intensity of the moment. Each beep of the monitor was a drumbeat against his chest, every flashing light a reminder that time was not on their side. Then, suddenly, a rush of movement. A doctor appeared, urgent and commanding. "Mr. Hale, we need you now." The voice snapped him out of his paralysis, dragging him into the immediacy of the situation. "One of the twins is crashing." Leon's stomach dropped. All the strategies, all the regrets, all the planning. None of it mattered in that instant. The only reality was the fragile life before him, the blood that tied him irrevocably to these two small girls, and the single opportunity to make right what had been wrong for nearly 2 decades. Adrenaline surged through him. His mind went blank, every thought and fear condensed into one singular focus: survival, protection, and redemption. He moved faster than he had in years, stripping off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves, readying himself for the act that might save the children who bore his blood, and in their survival, might heal the fractures in his own heart. Selena stepped aside just slightly, giving him space, yet radiating the tension of a woman who had fought every battle alone for 18 years. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of relief and cautious hope, a silent acknowledgement that, for the first time, he might be the man she had believed he could be all those years ago. Leon bent over, hands steady now despite the chaos, as the doctors guided him through the process. Every movement, every instruction, every careful action was a bridge between life and death, between regret and redemption. The weight of years lost pressed against him, but he bore it silently, focused entirely on the fragile lives before him. The machines beeped urgently, the sterile air of the ICU thick with tension, and he felt the fragile threads of control slip through his fingers, only to be replaced with the singular, desperate determination that had defined him in moments of crisis before, though never like this. Time stretched, minutes bleeding into hours, each heartbeat a fragile promise of survival. Sweat mixed with tears on his face, and he whispered apologies to his daughters, confessions of the love and regret he had carried in silence all these years. "I will not fail you," he murmured. "I will not let you go." Selena watched, silent but present, her breath catching as she witnessed the man she had loved, the man who had thrown her away, finally stepping into the role he had avoided for nearly 20 years. The pain in her eyes softened slightly, not yet forgiveness, but recognition of effort, of courage, and of the raw humanity that had always been buried beneath his armor. The doctor's instructions blurred into the background as he focused on the twins. Lara and Liana, fragile yet resilient, became the axis of his universe. Every second counted, every heartbeat mattered. Every breath was a chance to reclaim what had been lost, to honor the lives that were his responsibility, and to finally step into the fatherhood he had never imagined he would claim. The alarmed voice of the doctor rang out again, urgent and sharp. "Mr. Hale, one of the twins is crashing. We need you now." Leon's hands trembled over the monitors as time, for the first time in 18 years, became a race against life itself. The sterile hum of the ICU wrapped around Leon like a suffocating blanket. Monitors beeped insistently, machines hissed softly, and the faint smell of antiseptic filled his senses. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, and rolled up his sleeves. Time, the one enemy he had always tried to control in business, was now relentless and unforgiving. He sat beside Lara, one of his daughters, fragile and pale beneath the hospital lights, and felt the weight of 18 years press down on him. The nurse handed him the necessary equipment, and he followed her instructions with precise, trembling movements. As the first crimson streak of his blood entered the IV line and merged with Lara's small, fragile veins, Leon's vision blurred. Tears he had held back for almost 2 decades burned his eyes, threatening to spill over. He choked back a sob, forcing it down as he whispered softly, almost to himself, "They should have grown up knowing me. They should have known their father." Selena stood a few steps away, hands clasped tightly, jaw tense, watching him. Her voice trembled as she spoke, fragile and fierce all at once. "I tried to tell you, Leon. You never listened. You never believed me." His chest tightened. Regret slammed into him with brutal force, a tidal wave that drowned out everything else. He wanted to crawl across the room, to gather her into his arms, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness that he wasn't sure he deserved. But before he could move, a nurse's voice interrupted the moment. "Weren't you the couple whose mother came years ago to switch pregnancy reports?" she asked, confused, curiosity tinged with professional detachment. Selena stiffened immediately, the words striking her like a blade. "What? What did you say?" Her voice was sharp, defensive, her eyes darting toward Leon, searching for answers she had longed to hear for years. Leon's chest tightened, the room tilting around him as the pieces of the past fell into place. Rage, disbelief, and heartbreak collided in an uncontrollable storm. "My mother did what?" he demanded, voice cracking, raw and unfiltered, carrying the years of loss, the nights of wondering, the void of absence. Without hesitation, he stormed from the ICU, past the worried nurses and the low hum of machines, his phone already pressed to his ear. Each step carried the weight of every lost moment, every memory that had been stolen from him by deception. "Mom," he hissed, anger and pain vibrating through his voice. "Did you fake those reports?" Victoria's voice was icy, composed, the sound of authority sharpened by decades of privilege. "I protected you," she said smoothly. "That woman was beneath us. She would have ruined everything you've built." Leon's face contorted with disbelief and fury, eyes flashing with years of suppressed grief. "You destroyed my family," he spat, the words tasting like acid as they left his mouth. "Do you even understand what you've done? You took my wife, my children, my life." There was a pause, the kind that dripped with cold calculation. Victoria's tone remained unshaken, almost triumphant. "I saved you from ruin," she said simply, as if 18 years of manipulation, lies, and loss were irrelevant compared to her definition of protection. Leon's hands shook violently as he ended the call, gripping the phone so tightly that the edges pressed into his palm. He stood there, chest heaving, mind racing, a storm of anger, sorrow, and disbelief consuming him entirely. The world had never felt so hollow, so unjust. Before he could fully gather himself, a doctor ran toward him, breathless, panic etched in every line of his face. "Mr. Hale, it's your second daughter. She's asking for her father." Time seemed to freeze. Leon's heart thundered violently in his chest. His legs moved on instinct, carrying him through the halls of the hospital in a blur, each step faster than the last. Images of Liana, his second daughter, flashed in his mind, innocent and unaware of the years stolen from her, yet calling for the father she had never truly known. Selena watched him move, her own emotions raw and tangled. Relief, fear, and the ghost of old love flickered in her eyes. She had protected these girls for nearly 2 decades, shielding them from the father who had unknowingly abandoned them, and yet now he was here, real, present, and it terrified her as much as it stirred something deep within. Leon reached the ICU doors, breath ragged, heart hammering, and paused just long enough to look through the glass. Liana lay pale and still, her chest rising in shallow breaths, monitors beeping a frantic rhythm. She turned her tiny head slightly, eyes opening just enough to catch the sight of him. A cry escaped him, raw, unrestrained, filled with desperation and love that had built silently for 18 years. He pressed his hands to the glass, his face a mask of anguish, pleading, and determination. "I'm here," he whispered through the barrier. "I'm your father. I'm not leaving you." The room seemed impossibly still for a heartbeat, and then the nurses and doctors moved with urgent precision. But Leon's focus did not waver. His entire being was tethered to her, to this child, to the fragile, perfect life that bore his blood, and his name. Memories of the past 18 years collided with the present moment. Every Christmas missed, every birthday, every bedtime story he had never read, every tear shed in secret by Selena. All of it converged into a single, undeniable truth. He would not let her, nor his daughter, down again. Selena stepped closer to the glass, her hand brushing lightly against it, mirroring his posture. Their eyes met, a mixture of caution, challenge, and a flicker of something that resembled hope. She had fought to protect these girls from everything, from him, from the world, from the cruel hand of fate. And now fate had brought him back, demanding he rise to the role he had long avoided. Leon pressed closer, voice cracking with the weight of emotion he had carried silently. "Liana, I am your father. I will not let anything happen to you. I promise." The monitors beeped more urgently now, and the medical team surged forward. Leon followed every instruction with trembling precision, hands guiding, voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. Every moment mattered. Every second could be the difference between life and loss. Selena, standing behind him, felt a mixture of fear and awe. The man who had once been ruthless, arrogant, and prideful was now stripped bare, vulnerable in ways that no corporate deal or power play could ever achieve. She realized, reluctantly and painfully, that beneath the mistakes, beneath the years of silence, lay a man capable of immense love and courage. Time stretched in agonizing slow motion, the room alive with the hum of life, the rush of adrenaline, the rhythm of desperate hope. Leon's focus never wavered, every breath synchronized with Liana's fragile heartbeat. Finally, after moments that felt like eternity, her breathing steadied slightly. Her tiny hand twitched. A monitor beeped more steadily. Leon leaned back, exhaustion washing over him, but relief and love battling for dominance in his chest. The doctor turned toward him, urgency flashing in his eyes. "Mr. Hale, we need to monitor Lara immediately. She's responding, but she's asking for her father, too." Leon's heart twisted as he realized he must save them both, and the past 18 years of lost time were just beginning to collide with the life he had finally found. "Without him," she said, caressing Lara's cheek, "we can survive again. We don't need anyone but each other, for now." The twins, still fragile from their ordeal, clung to her words, but a tiny spark of curiosity and longing flickered in their eyes. They had felt something shift, sensed the connection between their father and themselves, and though they didn't understand it fully, it called to them in ways words could not describe. Leon's voice, distant yet present in their minds, lingered like a promise. His hands, once absent from their lives, had touched them now, and even if uncertainty clouded their hearts, a seed had been planted, a fragile hope, tentative but real, that this man could be part of their lives. Liana's eyes, wide and trembling, finally met Selena's. "Mom," she whispered, small and hesitant, yet filled with undeniable yearning. I I want to know him. I want to know my father." Selena's chest tightened. The words hung in the air, fragile yet unstoppable, the first step toward reconciliation, toward healing, toward a family reborn from the ashes of betrayal and lost years. The hospital room seemed to hold its breath, time stretching, each second pregnant with possibility, fear, and hope. Leon waited just beyond the door, heart hammering, unsure of how the fragile thread of trust might hold, yet willing to risk everything for the chance to be the father his daughters deserved. The weight of 18 years pressed down on everyone. Past mistakes, lost time, and the consequences of lies. But in that fragile, quiet room, a path forward glimmered, tentative and trembling, yet undeniably real. Every heartbeat mattered. Every whispered word carried weight. Every glance was a step toward healing. Liana clutched Selena's hand, voice barely audible. "Mom, please, let me meet him. I want to know my father." Selena hesitated, tears in her eyes, torn between fear and the undeniable truth. The moment had come to let the past collide with the present, and the choices she made now would shape all their futures. Leon's car pulled up slowly along the quiet street in San Jose, where the small rental home sat modestly among neat lawns and flowering shrubs. The house was nothing like the palatial life he had built in Los Angeles, nothing like the empire he had once ruled with steel and calculation. It smelled of warmth, of life lived simply, of struggle and survival. The home Selena had made for her daughters, a fortress of protection and love. He stepped out, the air crisp with the evening chill, hands buried in his pockets. Gone was the arrogance, the commanding presence that had once intimidated a boardroom. Now there was only vulnerability, humility, and a heart that had been broken and reshaped by the passage of 18 years. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the memories of absence, the knowledge of the pain he had caused, and the uncertainty of what awaited him. The door opened and Selena appeared, framed by the warm glow of the hallway light. Her arms crossed, posture rigid, eyes wary yet impossibly beautiful, as if every hardship had carved strength and elegance into her features. "I can't fix 18 years," Leon began, voice low, thick with emotion. "But I want to earn your forgiveness and their love." Selena's lips pressed into a thin line, a mixture of skepticism and guarded hope. "You can't just walk in and claim a place you abandoned," she said quietly, words weighted with the years of protection and defiance she had carried. He shook his head, shame and sorrow flooding his expression. "I didn't abandon them," he said, voice breaking. "I abandoned the woman who carried my whole world." A soft rustle came from behind the curtain in the living room. Lara and Liana peeked out, eyes wide and curious, tiny faces hesitant yet drawn by the presence of the man they had never truly known. "Are you really our dad?" Liana whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of awe, fear, and hope. Leon's knees hit the floor without hesitation, bringing him to their level. He opened his arms slightly, eyes glistening with tears, heart laid bare. "If you'll let me be," he whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I want to be your father. Every day I've missed, every moment I've lost, I want to make up for it, if you let me." For a long moment, the room held its breath. The twins stepped cautiously toward him, their tiny hands brushing against his, unsure, hesitant but drawn to the father they had imagined in dreams and wondered about in countless sleepless nights. The days that followed were slow, careful, deliberate. Each moment became a delicate dance of trust, understanding, and the tentative rebuilding of fractured hearts. Beach walks along the San Jose shoreline became a canvas for laughter and gentle conversations, the sound of waves mingling with tentative giggles. Leon learned the small rituals of fatherhood he had missed, tying shoelaces, reading bedtime stories, coaxing smiles from tired eyes, holding hands without demanding anything in return. Evenings were spent in quiet talks, the twins curled around him on the couch, sharing fears, secrets, and whispered questions about the years he had been absent. Leon listened, every word etched into his memory, a painful reminder of time lost, but also a treasure trove of connection he could now nurture. Painful truths surfaced, some brought forth by Selena, others by memories too heavy to ignore. The twins asked about the father they had never known, about the mother who had raised them alone, about the family they were part of but had never met. Leon answered honestly, sometimes faltering, sometimes choked with emotion, but always with sincerity, each word a small stitch in the fragile fabric of trust he was rebuilding. Selena observed him with careful scrutiny. She saw the change in him, a man who had once ruled with arrogance and fear, now humbled by the consequences of absence and loss. She saw him laugh for the first time in decades, a genuine, unguarded laugh that lit up the room, chasing away shadows of the past. She felt a flicker of hope, cautious and reluctant, but undeniable. They cooked meals together, a chaotic, joyful mess of spilled flour, laughter, and teasing. Leon struggled with recipes, Selena corrected him gently, and the twins delighted in every small victory and disaster. It was messy, imperfect, and real, exactly what family was supposed to be. Bedtimes became sacred rituals. Leon tucked them in, whispered small promises, and told them stories from his own childhood, tales of mistakes, lessons learned, and the hope of a future made brighter by their presence. Liana and Lara slowly allowed themselves to relax, to trust, to open hearts that had been guarded for too long. Selena began to see the man who had once been absent, the man who had made mistakes, but who was now present, sincere, and determined to rebuild. She watched as he gently soothed fears, answered questions, and bore the weight of guilt and hope all at once. Her own heart, so long armored, began to thaw. The twins discovered shared interests, small moments of connection, reading together, drawing, watching the sunset. They learned to laugh at his awkward attempts at games, to tease him gently, and to rely on him in ways that felt new and wondrous. Evening walks became a sacred time for heart-to-heart talks, Selena silently observing as Leon coaxed smiles from hesitant lips as he knelt to tie shoelaces or held them close when nightmares stirred. Each small act built bridges, mended cracks, and filled spaces that had been empty for 18 years. Selena, while still cautious, allowed herself glimpses of trust, of shared moments where laughter replaced fear, where honesty replaced suspicion. She saw him not as the man who had abandoned her, but as the father these girls had longed for, the man willing to pay the price of lost time with presence, patience, and love. Leon's humility, his willingness to listen, his gentle persistence began to carve a place in the twins' hearts. He wasn't trying to erase the past. He was creating a new present, one that included them, one that valued their trust, and one that honored the mother who had raised them against all odds. Selena finally allowed herself to watch him without resentment, clouding her vision. She saw the depth of his remorse, the sincerity in his eyes, and the subtle, consistent actions that proved he was committed to being the father they deserved. The house, once silent and tense with years of absence, began to fill with the warmth of cautious hope. Laughter echoed, small arguments over toys arose, and evenings became filled with stories, giggles, and shared meals. Leon learned patience, the art of listening without judgment, of comforting without taking control, of letting the twins set the pace for trust. He discovered the weight and beauty of love earned, not demanded, and slowly his heart mended alongside theirs. Selena, though still wary, noticed the shift. The girls, once tentative, now sought him out, ran into his arms, and whispered little secrets. She saw a possibility for family, flawed, messy, and real, and felt her own heart soften in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Even in quiet moments when the twins slept, Leon and Selena would exchange glances, silent conversations of forgiveness, shared pain, and a tentative, flickering hope. The bridge between past and present was fragile, but it was being built, brick by brick, heart by heart. Evening skies painted the world in muted gold as Leon prepared to leave one night. He lingered at the doorway, glancing back at Selena and the twins, a knot of longing and determination in his chest. His eyes caught something shimmering against Selena's collarbone, their old wedding ring suspended delicately on a chain, a symbol of what had been lost and what might yet be reclaimed. He froze, breath catching, heart hammering, as the silent weight of memory pressed against the present. The ring was small, understated, yet it carried a lifetime of love, mistakes, regrets, and hope. He knew in that moment that the journey ahead would be long, fragile, and uncertain. But the spark of connection, the glimmer of trust, and the chance to rebuild what had been broken filled him with a determination he had never known before. The night stretched quietly, holding its breath, the twins' laughter echoing softly from within, Selena's watchful eyes following him with a mix of caution and curiosity, and Leon standing at the threshold, caught between past regret and the possibility of redemption. Leon's gaze fell on the delicate chain around Selena's neck, the old wedding ring glinting in the soft light. His heart clenched. She kept it all these years, he whispered to himself, realization and hope mingling in his chest. But would it mean forgiveness? Or merely remind them all of the love that had been lost? 2 years had passed since the fragile, tentative beginnings of trust in that small San Jose home. 2 years of quiet victories, unspoken forgiveness, and the slow rebuilding of what had been broken. The small threads of connection Leon had begun weaving into the lives of Lara and Liana had grown into sturdy, unbreakable bonds. Not perfect, but alive, authentic, and real. Selena had poured her energy into creating a life filled with independence, beauty, and purpose. Her interior design studio in Santa Monica flourished, reflecting the elegance, warmth, and creativity she carried inside her. The studio's walls were alive with color, with light, with visions of dreams she had once thought impossible. Every client she met saw more than her talent. They glimpsed the resilience, courage, and quiet strength of a woman who had endured heartbreak, survived betrayal, and risen anew. Lara and Liana were thriving, brilliant, and fiery young women. Their passion for architecture and design mirrored both parents in ways that surprised and delighted Leon. Lara had his keen eye for structure and precision, while Liana carried Selena's intuition and artistry, blending logic and creativity into breathtaking projects. The twins were inseparable, yet distinctly themselves, each carrying pieces of the past, each illuminated by hope for the future. Leon, once a man whose world revolved around profit, power, and control, had transformed. No longer did boardrooms define him, no longer did cold strategy eclipse heart. He was a father, present, patient, and fully invested in the lives of the daughters he had once lost. He showed up for school plays, for late-night heart-to-heart calls, for every scraped knee and broken heart. Every moment he spent with Lara and Liana was a quiet act of redemption, a step toward repairing the irreparable. The evening of the twins' award ceremony was filled with soft golden light filtering through the Santa Monica auditorium. Lara and Liana stood proudly on stage, clutching their awards, their eyes scanning the crowd for the people who had shaped their journey. When the ceremony ended, they ran into their parents' arms, laughter and tears blending into a perfect, chaotic symphony. "We want our family. Just like this," Lara whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, the truth of her heart shining through. Selena wrapped her arms around both girls, smiling softly. Her gaze lifted to Leon, who knelt slightly to meet their eyes. The man before her was not the ruthless CEO she had once known, not the distant figure who had abandoned them all, but someone stripped of pride, someone who had faced the consequences of his absence, and someone who had proven that love, when nurtured, could heal even the deepest wounds. They walked together out of the auditorium, the California sunset painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The warmth of the evening mirrored the quiet contentment blooming in their hearts. Lara and Liana held their parents' hands, the chain of connection strong, unbroken, yet tender, a bridge spanning decades of lost time. Leon's gaze lingered on the horizon, memories pressing against him. 20 years ago, he murmured, voice low and reflective. I lost everything because of a lie. Selena glanced at him, her expression soft, tempered with understanding and cautious hope. And today, you found truth in the daughters you never knew, she replied, her voice gentle yet unwavering. Leon smiled, not the calculated, commanding smile of a CEO, but the honest, vulnerable smile of a man who had learned humility, patience, and the depth of love. He saw in his daughters' faces the innocence he had missed, the joy he had lost, and the opportunity he had been given to rebuild, to cherish, to finally be the father they deserved. As they walked along the coast, the ocean breeze weaving through their hair, the girls laughed freely, sharing stories, dreams, and secrets with both parents. The air was filled with the unspoken understanding that the past, while painful, had led them to this moment, fragile, precious, and infinitely valuable. Selena led the way, twins skipping beside her, their voices blending with the gentle rhythm of the waves. Leon followed, his steps steady, a quiet determination guiding him. He knew the path ahead would not be without challenges, but for the first time he felt ready to face whatever came, because he was not alone. The past whispered faintly in the recesses of his mind, the betrayals, the lost years, the mistakes. But the present sang louder, filled with laughter, forgiveness, and the possibility of new memories. Memories crafted not from wealth, power, or status, but from love, presence, and devotion. Selena glanced back once, catching Leon's gaze. A faint, forgiving smile touched her lips, a smile that carried everything unsaid, the hurt, the endurance, the hope, and the cautious promise of healing. Leon's chest tightened as he met that look, a mixture of relief, longing, and renewed purpose filling him. He knew this was more than reconciliation. It was a second chance at life, at family, at proving that even broken hearts could find their way back to one another. The twins, sensing the unspoken emotions between their parents, squeezed their hands tighter, anchoring themselves in the moment, in the family that had been rebuilt, piece by piece, thread by thread. Evening shadows stretched across the sand as they walked, the last light of day washing over them, golden and forgiving. Each step forward was a testament to endurance, to courage, and to the power of love reclaimed. Leon inhaled the salty air deeply, feeling a peace he had never known in the chaos of his former life. Here, among laughter, light, and the gentle presence of the family he had fought to reconnect with, he understood that destiny had given him one final chance, one that demanded courage, humility, and unwavering commitment. He looked at Selena and the twins, a silent promise forming in his heart. No lies, no power struggles, no past regrets could undo this moment. It was fragile, yes, but it was theirs. The sun dipped lower, painting the ocean in brilliant streaks of gold and crimson. For the first time in decades, Leon felt truly present, truly alive, and fully human, a father, a partner, and a man who had learned that the truest wealth lay in love, trust, and forgiveness. Selena walked ahead with the twins, the soft glow of sunset catching her hair. She paused and turned slightly, giving Leon that faint, forgiving smile again, a single gesture heavy with meaning, with history, and with hope for the future. He watched her, heart hammering, breath shallow with emotion. He knew the journey was not over, that trust had to be earned every day, but for the first time he believed he could do it. The waves whispered against the shore, a gentle lullaby of endings and beginnings, of love regained and lives reclaimed. The California sky, vast and forgiving, stretched above them, filled with possibilities, with second chances, with the promise that even after years of loss, hearts could be mended and families could be reborn. Leon took a step forward toward the path Selena and the twins were carving, toward the life he had been absent for, toward a future that held both the echoes of the past and the bright, undeniable light of hope. He whispered under his breath, voice soft yet resolute, "This time, I won't let them go." And in that moment, the past and present converged, the air heavy with emotion, and the family, imperfect, scarred yet whole, moved forward into the golden horizon, each heartbeat in sync with love, forgiveness, and newfound trust. Selena walks ahead with the twins, pausing just long enough to glance back. Her faint, forgiving smile reaches Leon's eyes, carrying unspoken words. "I forgive you, but it will take time." Leon swallows, heart pounding, and for the first time in decades, he believes destiny is giving him one last chance, if he is brave enough to take it.